The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm gonna guess that probably few of you have read this book before. However, most of you, I'm guessing, probably know the basic plot of the book, or at least have seen some different variations of it in other media. This book is one of the shortest books that we'll be reading this fall. Actually, no, it's the shortest book that we'll be reading this fall. But it has a lot in it, and raises a lot of important questions regarding the nature of humanity and the sin that lies inside all of us. So today I'd like to talk about two things in this introductory video. I'd like to talk about the author's life, and I'd like to talk about what things you should be looking out for as you read it. So first off, the author's life. Robert Louis Stevenson is the author of this book, and he's well known for two of his other books as well, Treasure Island and Kidnapped. He was raised Presbyterian, but pretty soon after going to college became an atheist. While his parents weren't terribly strict at the time, Stevenson would later regard them as such, and became quite rebellious against them in his college years. I would tell you guys more about his college years were like. However, you guys need to write about his life for one of your journal entries this week, so I'm going to refrain from doing that and let you do the research on that. What I will say is that you do want to pay some special attention on what kind of life he lived at college, as that will shed a fair bit of light on the topics that are covered in this book. So now that we've gotten through Stevenson's life, let's look at a couple of the themes that you should be looking out for in this book. Because of how short the book is, I mean, it looks long, but this actually has several other short stories in it, so the actual story only really lasts for this many pages, which are, if you can see in the video. Anyways, it's like about 70 pages in my book. I think it's 112 pages in your book, but it has pictures, so it's fairly short. However, even though it's short, it isn't shallow, so it has some good themes in it. There are two in particular that I'd like you guys to watch out for. The first theme that you're going to want to look out for in this book is hypocrisy. Like I mentioned before in my introduction to Pride and Prejudice, a lot of people today accuse the Victorians of tending to be hypocrites, of pretending like they're morally upright when in reality they were doing a lot of wicked things behind closed doors. And to a certain extent, this is a correct perception of a major flaw at this time. And this is a flaw that Stevenson tackles in earnest in this book. Several characters in this book are trying to live a double life. One of them is really obvious, but another is not so obvious. So try to see if you can find both characters that are living double lives and take note of how the book deals with both of them. The second thing that you're going to want to watch out for is what the different characters in the book have to say about the nature of sin and how we can overcome it. A large portion of this book is about trying to deal with the sinful nature that is within all of us. And particularly towards the end of this book, this becomes a really major theme. So look out for how different characters in the book view sin and how they act upon their knowledge of sin. Do they try to ignore it, conquer it, or something else? This will be one of the major themes that we'll be talking about in class. So jot down a few notes, or if you're not averse to writing in books, underline a few key passages if they strike you. So there's our introduction to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This book is written like a mystery novel, so it should be a pretty easy book to get through, and given its shortness, should be a pretty good respite from some of the longer books we've been reading this fall, especially when we look ahead to Crime and Punishment, which we'll be reading over the winter months. Mrs. White's might touch on some of the book next week, but we'll be going over it in more detail the 2 weeks after that. So good luck on your reading. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.